Joseph was in prison. In the book of Genesis, we read he was put in Pharaoh's prison. And before that, he was sold into slavery by his brothers, sold to Potiphar, and then falsely imprisoned for something that he didn't do. Potiphar's wife, all of a sudden, she grabbed him in the room and said, come be with me. And you know what he did? He left his cloak and he ran. We learned this in our Bible study this week. He ran away. He left his cloak, meaning that he was going to allow something that was his to be used as evidence against him. And of course, he was just a slave. And so he did not share in the same rights as an Egyptian. And so when Potiphar's wife accused him of rape, he had no cause for defense or appeal. Finding himself in prison. You talk about an unjust life. You talk about injustice in a person's life. You talk about pain and an unfair situation. And yet the Bible does not ever give to us any indication that Joseph ever complained. He never grumbled, he never whined, he never whinged. And yet he was languishing in prison. But you want to know what he did? Even though he was a slave, even though he was a prisoner, yet he didn't allow a bad attitude to get in his heart. He didn't allow a spirit of unforgiveness and hatred to poison his spirit, but instead he began to take responsibility of his situation. That he found himself in prison, and yet the Bible says in Genesis chapter 39 and verse number 22, and the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison, and whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. He was put in prison unjustly, but Joseph realized he wasn't going to spend the rest of his time there just whining and complaining, but he took responsibility wherever he was. He took the responsibility that to the extent where the warden said, I'm going to make you a head of all the prisoners. In fact, the implication was that he gave Joseph the keys to the prison. Can I tell you this morning that whatever situation you find yourself in, even though you can't get out of that circumstance, I urge you this morning, I challenge you to take responsibility over something that you could do. There is always something that you could do. There's always something that you can find in your life. Sure, it's not the best circumstance. Sure, it's not the most ideal situation, but let me tell you, there is something that you and I could do. You can take responsibility over your life.